I work as a research and innovation manager in Energica. My goal is to manage a project manager, a supervisor, research and innovation supervisor, and an operation maintenance supervisor. So the goal in Energica is to realize our R&D project more specialized in applied research. I know that you have a lot of university here. Is generally university work more in fundamental research, but some of them work in a very beautiful applied research project. And after that, to realize some of our project on our test site that we have, as we can have too. So for the first part of the topic about cold climate, we have a presentation from one of my colleagues, Charles Goldereau, that will present that the IEA Task 19, that we are the representative for Canadian, and also the cold climate research in Energica is a very big topic in the research organism that we have. Also, we have presentation from UQAR about Miss Montoya from University of Saskatchewan, André, about the detector that André developed. The presentation for UQAR, and the last presentation of the cold climate package is from Enbridge, from Alexandre Giguère. Also, for the climate change topic, we have 4 presentations. The first one, I don't know the presenter, but we have one at 2:15. A climate change agency from University of Victoria, from University of Alberta, Tim Wise, and after that we have breakout session at 2:30 for a period of 30 minutes. For all presenter, for each topic, you have 5 minutes. The slideshow is controlled by the, I'm thinking is the, the weekend staff. So if you want to move your slide, just say to the staff. So I don't take a lot more time to that. I want to let more place for the presenter. So I don't know, Charles, if you are there. Oh, Charles. Well, so Charles, if you can begin, the floor is yours.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Cedric. Hi, everyone. Hi again to some of you who were there, I think, on Monday when I was on the asset management topic. And yeah, I'm glad to be here today, and thank you, Marianne, Cedric, and all people involved in the research network to have organized this. So we wanted to start the discussion today with the IEA Wind Task 19. So this is a research group focused on wind energy and cold climate. And I don't know if all of you here today are familiar with these tasks from IEA, but basically they cover a variety of topics. Icing is one of them. LIDARs would be task 32. There's 41 for distributed wind, I think 42 for end of life issues. So basically they are focused research group on specific topic. This one on wind energy and cold climate is focused at improving the large-scale deployment of cold climate wind power in a safe and economically feasible manner. And it covers a variety of topics from project developments to operation and maintenance, health and safety, as well as standardization and new research. So there's 11 participating countries. Most of them are from Europe. So Nordic countries are there, and then UK, Germany, Austria, Belgium as well. China has been in the group, although I would say their involvement has been limited. So I would say I try to bring a North American perspective to the group. But some issues that are, I would say, more European focused are kind of high priority for the group. An example of which is ice throw. So the ice throw issue in Canada is less of an issue than in Europe. I would say there are less restrictive jurisdictions for managing ice throw. In some countries, such as Austria, ice throw from wind turbines is a very challenging topic for operators there. Whereas here in Canada, with our less dense population and wind farms in remote areas, I would say the main focus of the wind operators in general is to get as much megawatt hours in icing as possible. So the way the group works is that we establish a work plan. The current work plan we have is a 3-year one, so starting 2019, ending at the end of the year this year. I invite you to go on the website to find out more about that work plan and the specific deliverables. I don't have time to cover all of them today. What I would point out, however, is that there are several public references for the research community in wind industry. So I put the link there. Like there's, to me, I think, 2 really high-level research or publications that are of high interest. One of which is the recommended practices for wind energy projects in cold climates. So it will cover everything from project development to construction, instrumentation, and really provides guidance on the different steps to be achieved for to align with industry best practice for a wind farm in cold climate. Another one is the available technologies report, which covers anything from weather modeling, icing maps, ice detection, ice protection systems, testing facilities across the world. So if you're looking into specific solutions or partnerships with industrials or manufacturers of technologies, the available technologies report is quite extensive. I think there's over 500 references in it, so a good piece of documentation. We're working on the next work plan, which is now a 2-year based plan. If you have any ideas on specific topics related to cold climate that you would like the group to focus on, please share your ideas. And also, as part of my mandate to represent Canada, one thing I have to do for the next meeting is to do a reporting of the cold climate R&D activities in Canada. So if you have an ongoing project, whether it's R&D or industrial, that you can share publicly the name of the project, that's all I need. You can send that to me by email before April 16, so that would be appreciated. So yeah, that's it for the task 19. And of course, one of the reason we're selected as Canada's representative on this is that we're doing cold climate research at Nergica. So we own and operate a 4-megawatt wind farm in Gaspé. It's composed of 2 Senvion MM92s and 2 126 meters met mast. We have about 75% of commercially available icing detectors that are running on the site, planning to add 2 others this summer. The one we can see on the picture on top is the prototype from André Bégin, who will be presenting today. And so, yeah, André has been developing this in his PhD and now has founded his company, IceTech. So that's, I think, a great achievement for André. And we've been testing the prototype for a few years now, and we'll install the first commercial version of the IceTech sensor this summer. So that's great. We've also developed a camera system that can be installed in wind turbines, nacelle, hub, or met towers, mostly for R&D purposes. So we can do validation of ice detection system, as we can see on the picture below. So we have a camera looking at the ice detectors on a cell. We can look at blades to measure the performance of ice protection systems. We are also running an icing model called GPO. It runs on the GEMLAM HRDPS domain. So that's the third picture you have there. It covers Canada and northern US. So that's a 2.5 kilometer resolution, 48 hours ahead of time forecast. So we've been using that for projects related to cold climate as it can be used, for example, to forecast conditions on site, but as well as projects related to climate change. So there's a list there. One of them was the climate change impact on wind energy potential. So we've used that model to run icing simulation for a period of, I think, 200 years, if I'm correct. And basically study the impact of how icing climate will evolve through climate change. We've been doing projects also with RES, Capstone Infrastructure, University Laval, ETS. We've been working with Canadian operators to test retrofit ice protection systems and ice-phobic coatings. And I'm also doing a project on ice detection system performance assessment at the site. We've had support from both the Canadian and Quebec government on this. And we have, I think, a lot of data. So it can be made available for academic and industrial research project if needed. So that's a brief overview of what we're doing. And I'm happy to discuss any of these in the discussion we have later on. So that's it for me, Cedric.
Perfect. So now we have our next presenter is Miss Montoya, is from UCAR. So the title of this presentation is Correlation Between Meteorological Condition and Power Loss in Wind Turbines Under Icing Condition. I don't know if you are ready to present.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Perfect. Is your time.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. So, as you know, during the winter season, the wind potential is higher than in other seasons. This is due to the higher wind speed and air density, as you can see in the slide. The power of a wind turbine depends directly on the density and the curve of the wind speed. However, despite its advantage, the winter also has disadvantage, mainly associated with icing events. Ice accretion on wind turbines result in undesirable loads like fatigue, vibrations, also in safety hazards, and what this project focuses on, so the changes in aerodynamic properties. Energy loss associated with icing event can reach, in extreme environments, up to 20% of the annual energy production. So this project explores the correlation between meteorological conditions, the operating regime, and wind turbine performance. Specifically, we want to determine the power loss under various icing conditions using dimensionless analysis and deep learning, also known as neural network. This will offer to the wind farm operator first the tool to predict the impact of icing condition on production losses, second, recommend the best mitigation scenario, and third, a timely intervention for the icing system operation, preventive stop of the wind turbine, or continuing a normal operation. The aim is to maximize wind energy production during this event while protecting the wind turbine from excessive loads or safety hazards. The methodology to be used for the correct development of this project consists on firstly a process of bibliography review to identify different methodologies relating the meteorological condition and the operating regime with the type, shape, and mass of accreted ice. Then we study the various methods to determine the wind turbine power loss due to this ice accretion. And finally, we investigate how the literature addressed the direct correlations between meteorological condition, operating regime, and power loss without explicitly considering the ice accretion step. From the literature review, a database will be created with the result of experiments, observations, and numerical simulations. And in addition, CFD simulations will be performed in order to complement the information and to have enough information for the training of the neural network and the validation of the dimensionless groups that will be obtained with the p-theorem. As preliminary results, we have actually a database with information from CFD simulations performed on a particular airfoil that is common in the wind turbines blades. But it should be noted that these simulations were focused on the analysis of the lift and drag coefficient. This means on the airfoil aerodynamic loss and not on the loss of power of turbine power due to ice. In addition, we are initiating the process of our own simulations, considering complementary configuration to those already evaluated by other authors. We expect to start simulations on the complete turbine. Finally, thanks to the literature review, it has been found that the parameters that most affect aerodynamic performance are temperature, median volume diameter or the droplet size, liquid water content, roughness, and relative velocity. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Madam Miss Montoya. So for the next presenter, we are a little bit early. I don't take too much time for the introduction, so we are 5 minutes early compared to the schedule. But I don't know if Mr. Cajal, I don't know if I'm spelling well, Mr. Cajal from the University of Saskatchewan is ready to present.
Hi, it's Dr. Andrea.
Oh, sorry. So,
No problem,
yeah, perfect. So is your turn.
We're just meeting, so this is part of it. We're getting to know each other. Hi, everyone. It's nice to connect with you. And cold climates and energy in cold climates is an area that I'm quite passionate about. And I guess I just need the others. Do I put my slide up or does somebody change the slide? I think we're still on Tatiana's. There we go. Perfect. Okay, perfect. So my research is focused in 3 areas that really builds upon the work that I was conducting in icing mitigation for wind turbines in cold climates several years ago, and building on developing types and methods to de-ice or prevent icing on wind turbine blades. And then the next, where this evolved to was how do we deploy different types of renewables in remote communities? And so my research bridges both hot and cold climates, because regardless of where the remote communities are, they face similar issues. Usually that has to do with affordability, quality of life, and other aspects related to security of energy. And when we look at our remote communities in northern climates or in cold climates, especially in the circumpolar regions of the world, we have similar issues, whether they are islands in the Caribbean or in South America, to what we see. And that is high cost of diesel fuel. And sometimes our communities are isolated geographically, but sometimes they're just disconnected from the grid. So they could be part of the mainland, but be isolated electrically. So what this work does is bring together artificial intelligence and renewable energy to not only have smart grids, but smart microgrids. And so when we look at microgrids, we're looking at different types of renewables. I like to call it the recipe that matches best for that application in that region. to now go in where I'm focusing my research in Arctic energy security, particularly I'm in this year's Fulbright cohort. I'm representing Canada in our Arctic energy group. And what we're doing here is focusing on how do we find novel ways to secure the infrastructure related to energy in cold climates. So the Arctic is facing tremendous change, both from climate change, but also from business that, increased tourism and things like this that they're planning for post-COVID, obviously, but that there's a ton of pressure happening in this Arctic region. And so there's many, many things that will start to change, especially with melting sea ice and trade routes that are opening up. So planning for that, what does Arctic energy security look like? And so this area of my research is bringing in what we've learned from icing mitigation of wind turbines, what we've learned from microgrids, and applying the smart grid concept to microgrids, and now deploying that in the Arctic to build really robust systems that can be supported in these cold climates that include wind turbines, but also other elements of that, because we know that when we develop microgrids, we can't rely on just one resource or one technology. We really need to find that complementary solution with storage. And in the Arctic, that can look very different than in other places. And so this is really where this merging of these concepts and ideas are coming together in the work for the Arctic. So I'll just leave it at that. And if there's any other questions, I'll be happy to take it later.
Yeah, we will take the question in the split session at the end at 2:30. So the next presentation, I saw André. Oh, bonjour André. So you can present your sensor and all the development that you have with it.
Merci, Zurek. Thank you, everyone. I was part of the WestNet when I was a student, so I'm very glad that Marianne, Zurek, and others have brought that the new Canadian Wind Energy Research Network back, and it's glad to see many of you again in this context. So I'll be presenting briefly what we're doing in my lab. I'm a professor at the Université Laval in mechanical engineering. I've been hired 7 years ago, so I've been working working on the topics I've been researching during my PhD, but also developing new areas. And so one of them is obviously icing on wind turbines, as Cedric and Charles mentioned. My PhD was about developing wind sensors and ice sensors for the wind energy in cold climate. So we've been extending that, and I'm here talking on the behalf of myself, and also Jean Ruel and Jean Lemay, which are colleagues working with me on these topics. So we've been installing those sensors on many wind farms, and also installing cameras to assess what's also happening on the turbines. So going to the next slide, please. So this is the sensor we've developed now. 4 patents regarding the icing technology. We also launched a company in November 2020. And as Charles mentioned, we're very proud that Energica is our first customer for that new sensor, which is now commercially available. We've been installing this sensor on over a dozen sites in Eastern Canada, ranging from Ontario to Nova Scotia. So we've been publishing a lot also with this sensor, which is now commercially available, as I mentioned. So moving on to the next slide, please. So we've been also working with operators and trying to assess the market of wind energy in cold climates. So this is one slide that I like to present. It's a work that's still unpublished but under review. We've been cross-referencing icing maps and wind energy database that are available and trying to assess the market for the wind energy in cold climate. So we've been trying to map in North America, in Europe, Asia, all over the world, the number of turbines and where they're installed, what's the ice class, and what's the install capacity to sort of put a number on what's everybody's talking about. So these are the numbers. More to come in that paper that is still under review. Going to the other slide. So we, oh, I think we lost the PowerPoint, or maybe I lost it. So one other thing that we've been doing was trying to analyze the comportment of wind turbines in cold climate. So one thing that's on the other slide, please. It's trying to address the issue of the good modeling of the power curve in cold climate. So you see here 3 graphs which are the same turbine, but the first one is not corrected with temperature. The second graph is corrected with traditional approach, and the last graph is our new corrected approach, which is also under review in a recent publication, which you see a tighter fit on the power curve, which I think it's a improvement over what is being done right now for the modeling of the power curve. Finally, next slide, as I'm concluding, that's other thing we've been doing. We've been working with operators, and last Monday, we talked about data confidentiality and asset management. So this is one thing that we've been doing with Borealis Wind, which is a provider of third IPS solution. So we've been trying to assess the performance of their system, comparing the system which was installed in situ compared to other controls, which are experimental turbines nearby, which also align with TAS 19 guidelines on assessment of the IPS system. So I'll conclude with that, but I'm open for discussion and questions after the webinar. Thanks.
Thank you, André, for the presentation. So we will move for the next presenter. I don't know, in all the invite that we have on Zoom, we don't see a Mr. Farhad Mandinia. I don't know, he's here. I said that Andrian Elinka is on the line. I don't know if you are aware about the project that Mr. Faradzia is working for on it.
Yes, I have some information, but it's the first time I see this this slide. But I can I can do the presentation for him. I hope.
Not in the details, but more on broader view, and
yes,
just
yes.
say the large objective. Sorry that is not here, but just
no,
share
maybe it's
people,
just it's just a technical problem or something, or he's on
so
some other meeting. Anyway, and the project itself started as a solution for de-icing, using blade vibration to actually de-ice the blade. And we extend a little bit the project beyond the sole de-icing, and we look at using of piezoelectric materials both for the vibration control of the blades at relatively low frequencies, and de-icing at relatively higher frequencies. So actually the project itself, is quite large. We started by applying this methodology to relatively simple geometries. So we have a test bench on which we validate some of the ideas that we had in mind. First of all, how we can control the vibration by using these piezoelectric materials. So when we have natural vibration induced by some other sources, external forces, use piezoelectric materials to reduce the amplitude of the vibration and dump the vibration as quickly as possible. And actually, we're using some optimization techniques to determine where to place the piezoelectric materials and how to control them, how to excite, and what frequency and what intensity they should be, operated. Then at higher frequencies, there are a lot of studies that show that the adhesion of the ice can be eliminated by using vibration of the blade itself. And we look at the possibility of de-icing, and then of course we should use much higher frequencies for de-icing. And some of the time the position of the piezoelectric materials, piezoelectric sensors that are used for the oscillation control, vibration control, are not necessarily at the same optimal position for de-icing and so on. So what we're doing right now is try to combine the two of them and see if we can find an optimal solution. There are some advantages by using these piezoelectric materials. They are consuming relatively low power. They can be easily installed and retrofit existing blades. They have a response which is quite fast. The problem of optimization is very important because, of course, the problem is extremely complicated. And one of the recent work, it was to develop a method to map a real wind turbine blade into a much simpler geometry on which we can do the experimental work and the optimization, and that remap back on the real blade. So there are a lot of work going on. There are a few students working on this. Navid is one of them, but there are some other students working on the project itself. Navid is just starting working on this issue, but we already have few graduated students that they work on this project. So that's it. Thank you very much. I hope that Navid will be back for the question period.
Thank you, Adrian, for this non-prepared presentation. So for the next presenter is Alexandre Giga from Enbridge. I don't know if Alexandre is here on other names or...
Hi, Cedric. It's Tracy Duncan here.
Okay.
Alex is in training today, so I'm going to give his talk.
Ah, perfect. So the floor is yours.
Super. So this isn't actually research done by Enbridge. It's more a question for the group. Our Quebec Senvion sites experience a ton of pitch converter errors during winter, and we fail between 10 to 30 pitch motors per year per site. We suspect that the weight of the ice on blades is contributing to the high rate of pitch motor failure. So the slide here from Alex is a high resolution snapshot of the pitch current on on 3 axes in the 5 minutes before a pitch fault during an icing event. And it shows that the motor current on blade A is at least double the motor current on blade C. After the end of the converter fault, the currents resume to symmetric between the 3 pitch motors. So we haven't found a root cause for this sort of a root cause for the pitch motor failures beyond what we suspect would be the weight of ice during events like this. And we're wondering whether there might be scope in some of the ice operation modes that these turbines do to change pitch control behavior to reduce loads on the motors during the winter. So the question for the group, Energica has similar turbines, and I'm sure someone has a good opinion on this. Thanks.
I'm pretty sure that is a good question for the breakout session, maybe the first one.
Yeah.
So it's the end of the first part of the cold climate topic for this webinar. I'll let the other parts for Ryan. Ryan, are you here?
Okay, perfect.
Perfect.
Thanks very much, Cedric. So next up, we have a presenter from the Wind Energy Institute of Canada, Tim Jordan. Take it away, Tim.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, so my name is Tim Jordan, and I started at the Wind Energy Institute here in January as an intern through the University of PEI's new Climate Sense program. The program is designed to help build climate change adaptation capacity in recent graduates like myself, as well as within the host organizations such as CWERN. In the last decade or so, there's been a growing interest in assessing the vulnerability of different energy sources, such as wind power, under present and future climate conditions. Although the clean energy produced from wind power will help in climate mitigation efforts, it will also need to adapt to the impacts of the emerging changes found in climate and weather. As an example, annual erosion of PEI's shoreline is expected to increase as the amount of winter sea ice formation decreases. As such, when siting a wind turbine, it's important to understand that historical erosion rates will likely increase to rates that we might not have seen before and incorporate that into your design. As such, I've begun some research into long-term changes in wind speeds here at the North Cape and how that might affect future wind power generation. Like other variables, wind speeds will experience some change in the future. However, unlike temperatures and pressures, wind speed projections are pretty dependent on the methods and models used. Global general circulation models have been used to estimate future wind speeds. However, some research has shown that this model lacks accuracy for onshore wind. To better match onshore conditions, GCMs can be downscaled using historical data or with higher resolution models. Having a large data set of observed local wind speeds can not only help in creating a strong statistical downscaling, but it can allow researchers to compare accuracies of different downscaled climate models or data sets. On the table on the right, researchers looked at 3 regions in California where actual wind speed data was being collected and compared them to NARR, which is a historical reanalysis, as well as the 3 others, which are dynamically downscaled global circulation models called regional climate models. And as can be seen, each model at each location showed varying levels of accuracy compared to the actual observed values. So I'm looking forward to performing a similar comparison using WECAN's data and location further into my internship. So yeah, initially I wanted to see if there are any long-term trends in the historical data collected here at WECAN, because we've been collecting data since the 1980s. That might give me an insight into wind speed changes. However, I quickly began to see what I'm sure many researchers have seen before me, which is older data sets showing some variability when compared to whether this was from met mass being located at different locations around the North Cape, or the changing technology of anemometers, or even different data collection methodologies from us. It was somewhat difficult to compare recently collected data to that from the 80s, but average monthly values fared quite better. From our newer heated anemometer, 2012 in that graph, it showed reasonable consistency with the older Met tower that was installed in 2005. This is good because should that older sensor ever be decommissioned in the future, that newer data can be combined to create a long-term data set that could work in analyses like these. So moving forwards into the rest of my internship, I look forward to comparing our data set with the regional climate models, like what is done in the table, and assuming that those errors between our data set and the climate models are minimal, I'm going to move forward with an estimation of future changes in our local wind speeds using said models. And from that, hopefully I can calculate an approximation of future power production at the North Cape, which will build climate change adaptation capacity for the organization. So that's all for me. Thanks. Thanks a lot for this.
Thanks very much, Tim. Very interesting. Our next speaker is Professor Cornelis van Kooten from University of Victoria. Are you here?
Yes, I am. I'll just
okay.
Put myself up here and try and get the full view again. You're a little bit early on me here.
We are. We're making good time. Sorry for the.
Okay, so
we're just too efficient.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. We want efficient wind energy. So what I'm looking at is a little bit different than what other presenters have had. I'm looking at climate urgency and the role of forestry. And one of the things we confuse quite often, I think I mentioned this in another webinar, is the fact that when we're talking about wind and solar, or when we're talking about renewable energy, pardon me, and we think about wind and solar as being renewable energy, and they are, but when we look at the actual amount of renewable energy and where it comes from, we know that the most of it comes from hydro, but the second amount is from biomass. 60% of the so-called renewable energy increase in the European Union, for example, has come from biomass. Now, the question is, what do we do with biomass? Well, if you look at these diagrams here, first look at the one on the top left, and what we have is a timeline, which you can see from the horizontal axes there. And what we do is when we put biomass in, we get that big gap. I don't know if you can see that from 0 on the vertical axis down to the effective CO2 in the atmosphere, where this intersection where both these lines occur, the solid one and the one I've labeled great urgency, and I'll explain that in a minute, and the other one, no urgency. So what we assume is that when we're producing electricity using, let's say, a power plant using coal or natural gas, then this dotted horizontal line represents the CO2 released from burning that particular fossil fuel per unit of energy. And now we're going to replace that unit of energy with biomass, and we get this carbon deficit, all right, which is the difference between that dashed line and the intersection of the two S-shaped lines on the vertical axes there down below. And that carbon deficit needs to be taken away, and it does get taken away over time through tree growth. So as a result, if we move down this dotted line, or rather up the dotted line, you'll see that where it crosses the horizontal dashed line, that's where the deficit, the difference between the CO2 emitted from biomass burning and the amount of CO2 that would have been released had we burned, let's say, coal or natural gas, at that point, they're equal. So by then, we've had some time go by, and usually that time, depending on the species of tree that's growing, that time could be anywhere from a couple of years. If we're planting hybrid popular plantations, then we're talking about probably 5 or 6 years. Whereas if we're planting a more native species, even if it were a species that had been genetically modified to grow faster, it could take 20 or even up to 50 years. And then by the time we get rid of all the carbon dioxide that was released by that burning at that particular time, we end up at the point where that dashed line hits the horizontal axis there on the top right. At that point, we're carbon neutral. And to me, if you're going to be under great urgency, in other words, climate change is considered a particularly urgent problem, then you've got to make some kind of a decision about whether or not you're going to actually burn biomass. Because if we have a great urgency, then burning biomass simply won't do the trick, because it won't even balance against the natural gas in particular, but perhaps even the coal burning, so that in the end, biomass actually contributes more to global warming than it does in terms of mitigating it. So one of the solutions is to weight carbon dioxide molecules entering or leaving the atmosphere as to when they occur. And this is a notion that people don't like because we're basically discounting physical units, but that is found in the literature in the 1960s, where a famous economist, a resource economist from the University of California, Berkeley, by the name of Surasi Wantrup, he came up with this weighting of physical flows in order to define whether or not we had conservation or depletion of resources. So if we use no discount rate, all right, that's the no urgency line there, then basically we're saying that it doesn't matter if we release a unit of CO2 or take it out of the atmosphere, it doesn't matter when, as long as we do it. Well, if that's your view, then coal is no different than biomass burning, in the sense that eventually that carbon gets taken back out of the atmosphere. In one case, it may take 100 years. In another case, it may take 1 million or more years. But in essence, because you're not discounting, you're using a discount rate of 0 on physical flows, it really doesn't matter. Now, if you're using, say, a 20% rate, so in other words, if you have a molecule of CO2 entering the atmosphere in 20 years from now, and you're going to discount it at 20%, that means that in today's terms, that unit of CO2 entering or leaving the atmosphere 20 years from now is really worthless. And that's basically the issue of great urgency, in the fact that anything you do with great urgency really doesn't matter. So from a policy perspective, you need to determine what kind of discount rate you're going to use on future flows of carbon, whether they're into or out of the atmosphere. And at 20%, basically what you've got is this great urgency line, in which case the biomass CO2 debt relative to the fossil fuel is never overcome. In other words, you've got a worse case using biomass than you would if you didn't use biomass but even burned coal. So that's one of the problems. The other thing we're looking at is the role of forestry, and we're looking here on the graph on the right bottom. This is from the integrated assessment model developed by the Nobel Prize winner William Nordhaus, the DICE model, the Dynamic Integrated Climate and Economics model. And what we've done here is we've looked at planting trees, and we're making a very optimistic prediction here of 2.6 gigatons of CO2 being removed from the atmosphere annually. And we you note the difference between MT, megatons, and gigatons, because we've got on the vertical axes, we're measuring megatons, not gigatons. So we're looking at a base scenario in the DICE model is the black line, and that is the industrial emissions that would occur over time had we not done this carbon planting project, which removes 2.6 gigatons of CO2 from the atmosphere every year, pardon me. So then if we do this planting project and we discount these carbon fluxes at an annual rate of 20%, then you'll see the red line is the industrial emissions. In essence, the increase in or the change in industrial emissions is almost insignificant. So when we get down to it, two takeaways here. One is that biomass is not an answer. Growing trees is not an answer to our climate change problem. And number two is that this decision about the discount rate for physical carbon, which has never been done, is really a policy decision. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you very much.
Was that a serious presentation or was that a joke?
No, it's serious.
The other
Why
day,
do you think it's
Maybe we could
this presenter
save the
the other
discussion for
day-
the breakout session.
the other day, this presenter said that we need to go towards nuclear energy. He's concerned about molecules of CO2, but he's not concerned about atoms of uranium to 2035. Now he's telling us that we need to continue to burn coal. I think the presenter is in a wrong meeting. You should go in a meeting chaired by Donald Trump. You will have much more captive audience to what you're saying. Thank you.
Oh, I love woke.
Okay, so let's leave that discussion there for now. And let's move on to our next presenter, who is going to be Tim Weiss from the University of Alberta. Take it away, Tim.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. So today, I just want to talk about some work in the last little bit in Alberta, looking specifically at the wind interaction in the Alberta electricity market. So if you can maybe move the slide forward for me to the next one even would be good. So this is the one slide, thanks, that I just want to talk about today. So as you may or may not know, the Alberta electricity system is a little bit different than most of the other jurisdictions in Canada. And so our market is what we call an energy only market. And so you're only, generators are only paid for the actual energy that they generate and sell into the system. And renewables without a fossil or without a fuel cost are offering into our market at $0 per megawatt hour. And so what that means, the probability of that, every time it's windy, and now to a lesser extent, we're seeing solar come onto the system, but every time it's windy or sunny, that you have a commensurate reduction in the market price, which maybe is good for the consumer, but not so good for the wind energy producer, especially as you start putting more and more wind onto the system, you start pushing your price further and further down. And so increasingly, even though we're seeing lower and lower prices for wind, you have this tail chasing situation where wind is getting lower, but then lower cost, but then it lowers its own prices as well. And this has been a bit of a challenge for long-term development of wind in Alberta. So one of the areas where wind energy has been able to capture some more stable or predictable revenues has been through the offset market. And so what that means is that when wind is operating, wind operators are able to generate what are called offsets, or generate carbon CO2 displacement, tons of CO2, which then they can then sell to other emitters in the market, whether that's been typically coal plants or oil sands facilities. And so the way that you can generate that money is what's called through an emissions grid displacement factor, which is the formula you see in the top left-hand corner there, the EGDF. And what that basically is a weighting between what we call the build margin, or what new technology would have come onto the system in the absence of someone building a wind farm, as well as a balance between that and the operating margin, which is the if you look at the stack or the merit order of technology, what kind of is the next plant on the margin. And so you look at those two things and you come up with a bit of a weighting factor. Right now it's about half and half. And then that ends up being the amount of emissions that you are credited with. You can then turn around and try to sell to the to someone else in the market. And so as we all know, we've got a carbon price in Alberta and nationally, which is $40 and moving its way up to $170. And so that value of that carbon price is increasing, but at the same time, our system is, we're reducing coal in the system. And so the value of that credit is decreasing. And so what we've been sort of interested in looking at is not looking at the EGDF number necessarily, because that has there's good reason why you would include the build margin, but that it has a sort of a counterfactual assumption that of a project that never actually got built. And so what we were looking at was basically what is wind actually displacing in real time in the market? What has wind historically pushed out of the market because we've got a wind farm operating? What was not operating in its absence? And how is that changing over time? Especially you can see in the bottom left-hand corner here, our system has already reduced its coal production by almost half in the last 5 years, and will be entirely phased out of the system by 2023. So the bottom left-hand corner is showing you the share of the different technologies, and again you can see the coal being reduced. And so what we did simply was basically just take every single hour for the last decade and look at every single hour and look at what we call the merit order, which is the bottom right-hand corner. Looking at all the different technology in the stack and what their offers were into the market, and then just removing all of the wind every single hour and seeing what would have operated in the absence of that generation. And it turns out it makes sense, but potentially counterintuitively, now if we look at the graphs in the middle, you can see these are the results of that exercise, where what technology has been replaced as a result. If it had an hour where the wind didn't blow, for example. And so what you're actually seeing is that over the course of the last decade or so, wind is actually displacing more coal than it was historically. And so even though we have less coal on the system operating, wind is actually displacing it more frequently and more and higher volumes on the overall system. And that it makes sense when you take a step back and look at it, because the carbon price has pushed the marginal cost of coal up, and so coal is now operating more frequently on the margin, and so it is now becoming the technology that's getting displaced. And so that means, in a sense, that maybe we've been undercrediting the value of emissions for displacement for wind, at least in the past few years. And that's likely to be true for the next few years. And then the next question that we're going to be trying to wrestle with a little bit is, what does that mean suddenly when coal is gone, which is likely to be done? The few facilities that remaining have all announced they're going to be converting to natural gas or phased out entirely over the next 2 years. So we've seen potentially the value for these offsets be more, they should be more valuable than they have been, and then the opposite is going to be true 2 or 3 years from now. And so that's kind of the next question that we're looking at. So that's my discussion for today. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Tim. I'll just turn it over to Cedric, who can talk about the breakout rooms. Yeah, so for the next 30 minutes, we have 2 breakout rooms. So you can see so you can divide in 2 groups. The groups is one in cold climate, the others in climate change. So it's more open